You didn't decide to pretend. That's the part people get wrong. There was no moment where you stood in front of a mirror and chose a mask. It started quieter than that. It started with noticing that certain reactions made things smoother, that some versions of you didn't slow the room down, that some answers ended conversations faster. And at first, it felt like intelligence, adaptation, reading the room. So let me ask you something more precise than before. When was the last time you answered automatically and only realized later that you hadn't checked in with yourself first? Not a lie, not a performance, just an answer that arrived before you did. You probably didn't feel anything in the moment. That's what makes it hard to notice. Your body didn't tense, your voice didn't shake. Everything moved on normally. But later, when the day slowed down, something felt slightly misaligned. Not painful, just off. That's usually the first cost. Not guilt, not shame. A faint disconnection that doesn't ask for attention yet. You go to work, you reply to messages, you nod at the right times, you use the tone that keeps things efficient. And here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of that. How often do you experience your own day from a few inches behind yourself? Not watching dramatically, just slightly delayed. You're present enough to function, absent enough to not feel fully inside it. Pretending at this stage doesn't look like hiding. It looks like professionalism, like emotional regulation, like maturity. You know how to keep things moving. You know which parts of yourself complicate schedules. You've learned which emotions don't fit neatly into conversations that have time limits. So you don't suppress them aggressively. You just don't open the door. And here's the mirror you don't usually linger on. You're not pretending to others as much as you're postponing yourself. There's always later. Later when things calm down. Later when you have more energy. Later when you can actually feel without consequences. But later keeps getting rescheduled. And the cost of that isn't dramatic either. It's subtle erosion. Like rounding down decimals again and again until the total is smaller than it should be. You still recognize yourself. That's the dangerous part. Nothing feels foreign enough to alarm you. You tell yourself you're being practical, that this is just how adulthood works, that everyone does this to some degree. And you're right, they do. But here's the deeper question that doesn't come up in casual reflection. Do you remember the last time you surprised yourself with an honest reaction? Not a reaction you allowed, one that arrived before you edited it. If you have to think too long about that, something has shifted. Pretending evolves. It stops being about situations and starts becoming a default posture. You wake up already calibrated, already anticipating, already adjusting. Your internal state doesn't lead anymore. It consults. And slowly you stop asking what you actually feel. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned that the answer rarely changes what happens next. That's when pretending becomes economical. Why spend energy on emotions that don't get used? So you flatten them gently. You keep the edges smooth. You stay agreeable, composed, functional. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. That's another cost people don't talk about. There's no crisis to point to. No breakdown to justify your tiredness. Just a low-grade distance from yourself that never quite resolves. Let me ask it in a way that might land harder. When you're alone, truly alone, not distracted, not scrolling, not half listening to something in the background, do you feel relief or do you feel exposed? If it's the second one, that's not because you're hiding from the world. It's because you've been away from yourself long enough that silence feels unfamiliar. You've gotten used to being needed, responded to, expected. Those roles keep you oriented. Without them, there's a brief moment of disorientation, like stepping into a room without furniture. Pretending trains you to stay externally anchored. Internal reference points get blurry. And the emotional cost here isn't sadness. It's neutrality that lasts too long. You still enjoy things, you still laugh. But the experiences don't seem to leave a mark. They pass through you instead of into you. You might notice it when people ask how you are and the answer comes out clean and empty at the same time. Fine, busy, good, just tired. None of those are lies. They're just incomplete. And the scary part is how little resistance you feel while saying them. Here's another question that doesn't sound dramatic but cuts deeper. When something disappoints you now, do you feel it immediately or do you explain it first? If the explanation arrives before the feeling, that's not wisdom, that's habit. You've gotten very good at understanding yourself without actually experiencing yourself. You can narrate your stress, you can contextualize your reactions, you can rationalize your exhaustion. But understanding is not the same as contact. Pretending loves insight. It thrives on self-awareness that never turns inward for too long. Because if you stayed there, you might notice how much effort it takes to remain composed all the time. Not effort like strain, effort like constant calibration, reading faces, adjusting tone, deciding what version of honesty fits the moment. You don't feel fake doing this, you feel competent, which is why stopping feels risky. Who are you without that competence? There's a quiet grief in realizing that your most consistent skill has been self-editing, not censoring big truths, just trimming the small ones. The sigh you didn't release, the irritation you swallowed, the excitement you toned down. None of these felt important on their own. That's how pretending survives. It feeds on insignificance. Until one day, you notice that your inner world feels smaller than it used to. Not emptier, smaller. Like a room you don't walk all the way into anymore. And here's the part most people skip past. Pretending doesn't mean you don't know who you are. It means you've learned that who you are isn't always convenient. So you lead with what works. That creates a strange internal hierarchy. Utility over truth, timing over impulse, stability over authenticity. Again, none of this is wrong. It's adaptive. But adaptation has a shelf life. The cost shows up as a quiet impatience you don't know where to place. A low-level irritability that isn't about anything specific. You're not angry at people. You're not dissatisfied with your life. You're just tired of maintaining alignment. And the question underneath that tiredness is rarely spoken clearly. What parts of me have been waiting too long? Not dramatic parts, not childhood wounds, just current reactions that never got airtime. They didn't disappear. They went dormant. And dormancy isn't peace, it's suspension. You may notice this when someone misunderstands you and you don't correct them. Not because it matters, but because correcting them would require energy you don't feel like spending, or when you agree to things without checking whether you actually want to. Not out of fear, out of momentum. Pretending at this stage feels less like a mask and more like inertia. It's easier to keep going than to stop and reorient. And stopping feels dangerous, not because something bad will happen, but because you don't know what you'd find if you paused long enough. There's a subtle anxiety there, not panic, anticipation, like opening a drawer you haven't looked into in a while. You suspect there's something inside. You're just not sure how loud it will be. So you stay busy, not frantically, just steadily, enough to keep the internal volume low, and the emotional cost keeps accumulating quietly. Not as pain, as dullness. You don't feel broken. You feel slightly unreachable, even to yourself. Let me ask one last question for now, and notice what happens in your body when you hear it. If you stop pretending today, not publicly, not dramatically, just internally, what would become harder to maintain? Not what would fall apart. What would require more honesty than you currently allow? You don't have to answer that. Your system already knows. And maybe that awareness doesn't bring relief. Maybe it just brings stillness. That's okay, because this isn't about fixing anything. It's about noticing where you've been standing while your life keeps moving. And whether you're ready to step a little closer to yourself, or if pretending still feels safer right now.